Chapter 2. They were sitting in the front row of the stalls. Any minute now the lights would go out and the show would begin. Amy flicked through a programme. "Hey, it says here Sammy Starr used to do children's parties," she told the others. "I know I said he sounded like he did, but that's weird. He must be pretty good to go from that to the West End." "He was on one of those TV talent contests," Rory told her. "It said so on the poster. Britain's Got Magic, something like that." "Oh yeah," Amy turned a page. "Got all about it here. Hang on, though, he didn't win it. He was laughed off the programme, it says. But he had the last laugh. Sammy Starr now has a sell-out West End show. He has won great acclaim for the graveyard ghosts trick that forms the finale of his act. Wow, the boy's done good." Rory frowned. "If this show is a sell-out, how come we got the best seats in the house?" The doctor looked slightly sheepish. "Oh, I booked our tickets weeks ago. At least that's what they told me at the box office just now, so I'd better make sure I do it. Remind me to pop back in time and buy them later, will you? The universe might collapse if I don't." As if to distract them, he added quickly, "Anyone like a donut?" He put his hand in his pocket and found only an empty paper bag. "Someone's nicked my donuts." Amy leant across and wiped a splodge of jam off his face. "You already ate them, you donut." The theatre was almost full now. The only empty seats were in the row behind the doctor, Rory and Amy. "That's odd," said the doctor. He looked over his shoulder at the empty row. "If they booked seats that good, you'd think they'd be keen to see the show. Yet they haven't even turned up." "Ooh, this might be them," said Amy, also looking behind them. A party of elderly people was coming down the aisle. They were led by a middle-aged woman in a navy blue blazer with gold buttons. She ushered her group into the empty row, telling them to hurry up, much too loudly. Just as the last of the party sat down, the lights went out. Amy heard someone behind her draw in their breath sharply. "Don't worry, Mrs. Hooper, it's just the show starting," said a cheerful voice. Amy thought the voice belonged to the blazer woman. She wondered why so many people thought being old was the same as being stupid. The curtain was raised. A spotlight shone onto the stage. A figure stood in the middle of it, head bowed. It wore a black top hat and was wrapped in a cloak. There was a rumble of drums. A voice from above said, "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. Sammy Starr." The drums crashed more loudly, and another, brighter spotlight followed, a man swinging down from above. As he reached the cloaked figure, the swinging man kicked out. The cloak crumpled into a heap and the audience gasped. The top hat rolled away as Sammy Starr landed on the stage. He scooped up the hat and put a large white rabbit out of it. Then he placed the hat on his head. Everyone clapped as he took a bow. "Very nice," said the doctor, raising his voice so Amy could hear him over the applause. Of course, he had a second hat with a rabbit in it waiting ready for him. That's why the stage was only lit by spotlights, so he wouldn't spot the hats being swapped. Amy glared at him. "Don't spoil it," she hissed. Amy could have saved her breath. For each of Sammy Starr's tricks, the doctor announced how it was done. He wasn't trying to show off. Amy knew that. Working out the tricks was just the bit of the show he enjoyed the most. It was a shame Sammy Starr didn't seem to enjoy it as much. At first, he was clearly trying to ignore the doctor. Later, he started to twitch and glare at the front row. Amy was quite relieved when it came to the interval. "Having fun?" she asked the doctor as they sat in their seats at the front. He nodded happily. "Oh, yes, although—" A frown crossed his face and he stood up. "Back in a minute. I just want to check out a few things." Amy and Rory sat for a few moments just holding hands. "You don't think something's wrong, do you?" Amy said after a while. "Nah," said Rory, although he looked worried. "Just because we've never had a holiday without monsters or crashing spaceships before." "Well, no monsters so far, and we've been here almost a day," said Amy. "Monster." The shaky voice came from the row behind. It was a word that Amy and Rory couldn't ignore. They both spun round. The speaker was a member of the elderly party. She looked to be in her 80s and tears were trickling down her cheeks. Amy knelt up on her seat and reached over the back to hold the old lady's hand. "Hey, don't cry," she said gently. "What's the matter?" "Monster," the woman repeated through her sobs. "Lost," said the elderly lady in the next seat. Amy turned her gaze on her. She was also crying. "So very lost. So lost we were never found." The woman in the blazer stood up. "Just ignore them," she said to Amy. "Mrs. Hooper, Mrs. Collins, be quiet now. You're getting on this nice young girl's nerves." "Oh no," Amy replied. "They're not getting on my nerves." She didn't like to hear people being spoken to so rudely when they'd done nothing to deserve it. "Well, you're very kind to say so," the woman said. "She's very kind to say you're not annoying her," she told the two old ladies loudly. "They were so keen to come," she went on, turning back to Amy. "The second they saw the poster, it's been Sammy Star, day and night. Now then, Miss Leake, I said to myself, here's an idea. Wouldn't it be a lovely treat taking them to see his show? But they've done nothing except make a fuss since we got here. Monsters indeed. Why, they don't know the meaning of the word." "Did you live through the war, Mrs. Collins?" Rory asked softly. "VE Day," she whispered back. He nodded. "She might have a better idea of monsters than you think, then," he told the woman in the blazer, Miss Leake. "Everyone all right?" asked the doctor as he returned. "I'm a bit worried, Doctor," Amy began, but Miss Leake interrupted her. "Nothing to worry about at all," she said. "We were just being silly, weren't we, Mrs. Collins and Mrs. Hooper?" "Well, you might have been being silly. I'm not so sure about them," muttered Amy under her breath. The theatre lights dimmed again. The doctor made his way back to his seat. Amy still felt concerned about the two old ladies, but wasn't sure what to do. She decided she would tell the doctor all about it after the show. The curtain rose for the second half. The doctor didn't talk over the magic this time. He seemed troubled. Finally, it was time for the big showpiece, Graveyard Ghosts. Mist swirled across the stage, which was now covered with gravestones and statues. Amy shivered to see one that looked like a stone angel. "Makes me think of you-know-what," she said to the doctor under her breath. Tall trees twisted at the sides of the stage. A girl poked her head out from behind a tree, then crept out to the middle of the stage. She was young and pretty, and dressed in a Victorian-style white nightgown. Long, dark hair curled down her back. Suddenly, a pale, bony hand thrust through the turf of a grave. In the second row of the stalls, Mrs. Collins and Mrs. Hooper screamed and screamed and screamed.